Hello, and welcome to Your Vote Counts, a public informational, nonpartisan service program designed to get acquainted with the candidates vying for the 2022 general election for Congressional District 6, Senate Districts 10 and 11, House Districts 17 through 23, Salem City Council, and the Marion County Commissioners. These interviews come to you through the producers at Capital Community Media, collaboration on questions and moderators from the Association of University Women, Salem City Club, and the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk counties. All 27 candidates for these races were invited, and all but 6 chose to participate. Candidates did not receive the questions prepared by the League of Women Voters ahead of time. Candidates were invited to prepare a 2-minute opening statement addressing their background and qualifications for the office, as well as a 2-minute closing statement addressing their goals for the office if they're elected. I'm Toma Cadu from the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk counties, and it's my pleasure to introduce Paul Evans, who's running for House District 20. Welcome, candidate Evans.
Thank you.
Now time for your closing or your opening statement.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I'm Paul Evans. I'm currently serving as House District 20 state representative. That includes Monmouth and Independence, West Salem, and South Salem. I have been serving in this district in one way or another since I was 18 years old. I was born and raised here, went to high school here, went to college here. Went in the Air Force after college, and when I came back from the Air Force, decided to come back to Monmouth and make it my home, and eventually got a master's degree over at Oregon State, which is not in the district, but pretty close. I've spent 20 years in the military, about mixed half and half between active duty with the other part in Guard. Had the opportunity to serve overseas in about 10 different contingency operations, spending a little over 4 years in combat zones. I've been a teacher over the last 25 years, just kind of the job I do between deployments and the job I do after retiring from uniform. I'm running because I believe this district needs a voice in the legislature that reflects the people. And that sounds pretty trite and overused, but the fact of the matter is we need the people's voice in that building. I work a real job in addition to serving in the legislature. There are very few of us like that. That gives me a level of independence that a lot of other people really just don't have. I understand the challenges that people are going through because I'm right there next to you. I happen to believe that our best days are ahead. And I believe over the last 8 years, I've shown leadership as a chair of a committee, several committees, as well as a member of the body who've helped pass significant legislation, often in bipartisan ways. We've made good progress, but we have to continue that progress. Our nation right now is undergoing a number of challenges. Right now, as the chair of the Wildfire Recovery Committee, my job is to make sure that we're not only meeting the needs of today, but preparing for tomorrow. And I look for the opportunity to continue serving if given that opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today.
And thanks for that background information. Now let's give you an opportunity to address our questions developed for this interview. Our first question relates to the Inflation Reduction Act. What elements will benefit Oregon?
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act is one of those creatures that has so many different elements to it. You can either fall in love with it or you can try to pick it apart, depending on your political perspective. I happen to be a realist. What that means is I look at that particular piece of legislation as about a 5-part combination. It does a little bit of work in terms of trying to constrain the costs of pharmaceuticals and drugs. Doesn't go as far as some people want, but it does make progress. It puts a whole lot of money into investments in green energy technology. And that, unfortunately, in our current age, branding and labeling sometimes gets away from us. All that means is investing in jobs that are going to help us be more secure, less dependent upon petroleum moving into the future. It also puts a lot of additional money in infrastructure, building upon the bills that went before it. And we literally have a country that for 70 years really didn't invest in our infrastructure. So we have a number of issues with our bridges and our buildings and our roads We also have some challenges with our human infrastructure. We haven't been preparing people for the jobs of the 21st century. So that particular bill has, again, a number of different elements. I happen to believe what the end result of it will be is, number one, helping to fuel some rehabilitation and renewal of really necessary critical infrastructure. Two, it will begin conversation on how we find a way to find better balance in terms of the costs for pharmaceuticals. Three, it opens a door for workforce training that Oregon has already been really leading the way on in terms of meeting the needs of the 21st century and aligning what we need in terms of workers with the skills that we currently don't have in our workforce. The fourth thing it's going to do is give us enough support in human services to continue to level out the impact of COVID, which, though we are supposedly out of COVID, the shadow of it remains. And the fifth thing is it actually brought together a lot of little pieces that really had been waiting for legislative action and a vehicle to be attached to that solved a lot of problems around the country. As anybody knows, sometimes the things that you want to get done, you don't have the authority to do. And that bill, I don't know how many sections it has, but it's in the hundreds. A lot of those sections actually are solving individual challenges. So as a package, I think the bill is a very important success. I also believe it's going to be the foundation block for a whole lot of work that we're looking to do in the next legislative session.
Thank you for that. Turning to our next question, what do you think about renewable energy tax credits?
I think tax credits are smart if they're aligned with what industry will actually accept and see as valuable. So what I mean by that is this. There's some people that believe that tax credits, you have to be careful and not give tax credits for things businesses would already do. That's a subsidy. Okay, that may be true. I happen to believe the best way is to figure out with business where we want to go in the future, especially with energy and technology, and say, all right, we want to go from here to there. If you're doing it on a business model, it'll probably take X number of years. We don't want to wait X number of years, so we want to get it in a shorter amount of time. What obstacles are in your way to prevent you from getting there faster? In some cases, it's a tax code. In some cases, it's other costs that are sunk into it. In other cases, it's a weird hybrid of things that companies can and can't do or can and can't charge because of international agreements and treaties. So in general, I think that we need to have conversations about those kinds of tax credits. But I want to make sure that they're actually aligned to an outcome. Sometimes one side wants tax credits just for the sake of tax credits. The other side doesn't believe that they're helpful. I'm an independent. I'm in the middle where I believe that ultimately tax credits can be helpful, but you have to tie them to a particular outcome and an expectation. And that means as a result of a common work group moving forward.
Thank you. My next question is, what steps should be taken to address Oregon's youth mental health needs?
I wish I had the answer to say what the one solution would be. I don't think we got ourselves into the mess we're in right now overnight, and I don't think we're going to get out of it overnight. I think that there are probably 5 or 6 things that we need to focus on. So first, there's no doubt that young people need access, more access, sustainable access, affordable access to mental and behavioral health services. But in order to provide those services, we actually have to have people who can provide those services. That sounds simple, but we don't have enough providers. So the first part to that is actually training enough providers to meet our needs. Second, obviously, is making sure that as we grow that workforce, we make services more accessible, more affordable, make sure that they're quality, so that isn't just anybody hanging a shingle out saying, I'm providing services, because these are our kids. We have to make sure that they're trained and that they're competent. The third thing I think we have to do is recognize that schools need to be reframed, reformed. I've been in legislature fighting for basically full funding of something called the quality education model. We've never fully funded it. It was a bipartisan agreement of what schools could and should provide to get students, not just educated students, but well adapted, connected, community-focused students graduating. We have gotten away from that. We have to look at finding ways for kids to have between that 3 to 6 time frame activities that just don't take their time, but build community and build upon the values and build upon their image and their self-image. we have to get back into the business of recognizing that young people they're not just our future, but they are worthy of everything we can put into them because the world continues to get more complicated. And if you don't have a good sense of self-worth, if you don't have a good balanced set of how to adjust when crisis comes up, and if you're not more resilient, you're not going to probably succeed in life. So to me, the real key is making sure that we plan for making services more accessible and affordable, but we have to get the workforce there. And we have to have the other services in and out of schools, around schools, so that folks have opportunities to get out of their own little world, their own little tech world of playing games and doing the other things that kids do when there's no alternatives, and get us connected to each other again. I think COVID really set us back, and it really put kids in a darker hole than they were going in. And we need to keep our eye on it. We need to make real investments.
Next, let's explore an aspect of elections. What is being done to protect and support county election officials and support staff as they conduct election duties? Is there anything else that should be done?
Well, sadly, not enough is being done. Federal government recently declined, as I understand it, declined to provide additional services for county elections people. I hope that the state of Oregon makes some investments in that. We did in the last legislative session. We passed some laws to make it a little more clear that interfering with an election is something that's not only a bad thing, but going to get you to jail. We put some money in for passive security systems. But really, my concern is that because we now have a country that for 30% of the population, unless you win, you can't accept the election, that threats and violence are going to become more common. So as a person who spent most of my life in homeland security and military activities, I take this kind of threat very seriously. And as the co-chair of the Public Safety Subcommittee on Ways and Means, I intend on ensuring that our investments that we've already made are better aligned, and that we continue to meet any request that's asked for, and we do it in an orderly process. The good news is I happen to believe that most Oregonians want a free and fair election, and because we do mail-in ballots, it's a little more secure than it is in some states where people are lined up, and theoretically the elections people in that environment can be threatened and coerced. So I think we have a safer system overall. We're making good investments. We need to continue to, but most importantly, we need to change the culture so that people recognize that in a country as diverse and as big as America, and a state like Oregon, where there's 4 million plus people, you have to have a majority minority rule. Sometimes you win the election, sometimes you lose the election, but you have to respect the process. And that's really what we have to get back to. It's not just protecting the folks who are implementing and executing the elections. We need to do that. But we also need to get back to civics. We also need to get back to making sure that people understand that the country will not stand if people start questioning elections.
Thank you for that. Considering Oregon's unique taxpayer kicker policy, what impact do you think it has on the financial accountability and stability of state government?
The kicker is there's not a metaphor I can use that would adequately explain my frustration with the kicker. It started out as a good idea. It started out as an insurance policy to make sure that politicians didn't spend money willy-nilly for no purpose. And yet, what person who says government should run like a business would ever accept an environment where when you actually have money coming in more than projected, you give it all back so that you can't invest and you can't put money there for when you have bad years or lean years? This has been really brought into contrast, high contrast, given the recent 2020 and 2021 wildfires. We were able to do some good work on recovery, but there were things we were not able to do because we didn't have the money to do it. I would love it if we were able to put the kicker money not simply into new programming. That would be inappropriate. But I think if we could find a way to put the kicker into emergency funds that are designed specifically for response and recovery from catastrophic events, I think all Oregonians would recognize the value of that. However, that isn't our reality. So you're asking right now what the situation is and its impact on our economy. I think it makes forecasting very difficult. I think it makes the rest of our government not as effective as it could be because we never really know how much we have set away for the rainy day.
Well, thank you for that. I think that will be our last question. We really appreciate the time you've spent with us, and I'll now invite you to deliver your 2-minute closing statement about your goals for the office if elected.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be here. This really is what America is all about. It's why I served in uniform, giving people an opportunity to make their case, to talk about their ideas, to try to answer the questions the best they can. I happen to believe that we have a lot more work to do in the legislature and that I have the skills aligned to do that. I happen to believe over the last 8 years, we've made an impact, House District 20, and over the last 25 years in and out of public life, I've served the public as best I can with honor and with effect. That said, we have to look forward to tomorrow. And what we need to do is continue the work on reforming emergency management. We've done some good steps on that over the last several years, but we need to continue our work on preparing for both response and recovery to major catastrophic events. I'm currently hip deep in that process, and I'd like to continue the work on it. I also believe we have to figure out a way to make a middle-class economy, which we've not done in Oregon for some time. We've whittled around the edges, but we've forgotten that ultimately we need a strong, vibrant middle class to ensure that the country can not only survive, but thrive. We can reach our aspirations. I happen to believe we're living in an era where some people would rather blame and tear down rather than build up. And I think that's unfortunate because Oregon has always been better when we put partisanship on the shelf, came together in common cause, and built the church or raised the barn or built the street or helped the school. That's the Oregon I believe in. That's why I believe I have the Democratic and the Independent Party nominations as well as the Working Family Party nomination. I think my background has provided me the opportunity to be ready for this moment. And while we can always differ over the specifics, I think ultimately what matters most is when you're looking at that ballot, who actually shares your values and your aspirations? We're in this together, and I certainly appreciate your consideration this November, and I hope I can earn your vote.
Thank you, Paul Evans, for our interview today and for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thanks also to Capital Community Media for their extensive technology and producer skills used to create this program. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk counties for the design and preparation of the program, and to AAUW and Salem City Club for help with question development and with moderators. And thanks to you, the public, for watching in order to become a more informed voter. For more local, state, and national voter information on candidates and ballot issues, visit vote411.org. You have until October 18th to register to vote or to make any changes on your registration. Ballots will be mailed out around October 19th, 20th, and according to a new law, will be accepted if postmarked before or on November 8th. Elections matter. Remember to vote because your vote counts.